Hello and welcome to Slick Willy Flying. Today we're going to talk colors. And when we talk colors today, we're actually going to tie a great bait fish pattern. And I'm going to explain why I tie the colors I tie. As you can see, here's a little assortment of bait fish. Craft fur bait fish. I tie them in all different kind of colors, different kinds of flash. Here's the back side, more colors. But at the end of the day, if I can only choose one, I would say that for me, I would naturally gravitate to a white or polar bottom and a dark top. In this case, I use this blue Grizzly craft fur to make the top. I think that when I look at, it doesn't really matter if I'm looking at mullet, threadfin, cigar minnows, you name it. Most of the bait fish that I see they have a white or a silvery, that's why I like the polar, kind of bottoms and sides. And then they have a darker top, whether it's green or blues. And sometimes you see some hints of like purple or even some dark browns and even darker than brown. Sometimes they look black. And those are the colors that I routinely see. Sometimes I see very silvery eyes. Sometimes I see yellow eyes. You know, I kind of make a little bit of everything. So now that we're talking colors, let's go ahead and tie a fly. So for today's fly, I'm just going to tie a reverse tie craft fur bait fish. This is a great fly for fishing, you know, the inshore search and destroy kind of fishing, casting on a beach. You know, it'll work equally as well if you actually see a fish. If you throw this to a big old snook, he's gonna eat it. I can't imagine there's too many snooks that would turn down that bait right there. So for a hook today, I'm going to use an Ahrex NS122, a light stinger hook. And the reason I'm going for this hook is most likely my target species is going to be sea run trout in Scandinavia. So I kind of want a light wire hook that's going to be a little bit more penetration. And you know, it's not like I'm casting to a big old bull redfish that'll destroy that hook. So this hook is perfect for what I'm doing. For thread, I'm going to use 100 denier white thread, which then I'm going to take a marker to it at the end and make it black. I'm going to use 3 kinds of craft fur. I'm going to use this little off-white variant. I'm going to use a tiny bit of gray, and I'm going to use this Grizzly that I showed you earlier. And lastly, for my flash, I'm going to use a little bit of wing flash in this blue, which I think looks great on this fly. So before I get started, the only thing I didn't get ready, so I'm going to put a little bit of lead on this fly so that the fly does want to fish below the surface. Very little. I'm not going to put a lot of lead at all. This is 0.20 lead, and I just broke off a piece, I don't know, a couple of centimeters, 3 centimeters, and I'm going to make some wraps here. I don't really count wraps, but if I had to guess, I'm going to guess that I'm around 10 or 12 wraps, something like that. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of super glue on this, and now I'm going to give this a chance to dry while I change the camera angle with my rum and coke. So I hope you guys have a cocktail. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start with a little 100 denier thread. I pre-cut some craft fur just to make this go a little bit quicker. So the first piece we're going to put on is going to be the tail section, and this will determine the overall length of the fly. So you have to think about how long you want your fly. So there's one hook shank, two hook shanks, and to me two hook shanks is plenty. A couple of loose wraps, distribute around the hook, then I could pull this tight. And I could take the rest of this material and just trim it off. I like to give it a little spin like that because I'll get the most of it now. Just like that. You notice I never cut on the same side as my thread bobbin. Okay, so now I'm going to work the thread to about halfway up the hook shank, and now I'm going to put the gray on. The gray will be on top, and this is going to be the first piece that's going to give me a little contrasting color. I want it about as long as the overall tail, if anything, just maybe I don't know, half an inch, at most half of an inch shorter. And then I want to trim it about where the end of the lead is, because I have to give myself room for that reverse tie-in. Couple of loose wraps, making sure that I like it. Now I don't want this to go around the hook. I want this to stay on top, so I'm going to hold it tight. I'm going to crank that down. Now we're going to go ahead and put in another piece on the bottom. We'll flip this fly over. Again, I have a pre-cut piece. But this piece, I want it to be shorter. So I want it to be about half the distance of the overall tail, because this will help make that body shape that I'm looking for. So I'm going to trim this a bit shorter. And you see that I'm making that color that we were talking about, dark on top, light on bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and place this all on my side of the hook. Doesn't really matter, because I give it a few loose wraps here. Distribute on the bottom, just the bottom, holding it tight and locking this in. Then I can use one of my needles to just bring half that material back to the opposite side. Perfect. So now it's the reverse tie. So for the reverse tie, I can start with the bottom again. And what's my length? Well, I want it to be about as long as the piece that I just put in. But I have to give myself a little bit of extra room to make that reverse tie. And honestly, this is very simple to do. It just takes a little bit of practice to get used to the length that you're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and present it. And now a couple of loose wraps. And I can cut this tag off. You don't have to cut the entire tag off. It will never be seen. What really is important that you don't cut off any of the other materials that you've already applied. Perfect. So now that's on there. And that's going to be just on the bottom the way we have it. Nice and tight. Perfect. Now I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of flash on. For flash, I don't really count. It's my wing and flash. I'm just gonna pull out 5, 6, 7, 10. I have no idea what I pulled out there. I'm gonna take them about the center point. I'm gonna put it on the thread. And I'm going to put this right on top. Just like that. Perfect. And this will distribute on the top. If you really wanted to, you can take a needle and just make sure that they distribute out. Just like that. Perfect. Okay. Now the last material that we're going to put on, which is the Grizzly, which I also pre-cut and have it ready. Now the Grizzly, this one is really important that we don't wrap the Grizzly around the hook. I want this only on top. So the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to give this one wrap around only the Grizzly. Sometimes I moisten stuff to keep it out of the way. One wrap around just the Grizzly, bring it to the hook, and now around the Grizzly and the hook. And then when I pull this tight, that Grizzly is going to stay right on top. Just like that. And I do want to cut that tag. Super careful. You have to be so careful now to not cut off the flash or any of the previous craft fur. And that right there is plenty. Alright, so now what I'm going to do, I have a push tool, but I start first, I use my fingers to start to separate the two colors. Then I use my push tool to bring it all back. Just like that. Now here you really need to make sure that you like the way everything is sitting, which I do. And now, once I'm happy with it, I pull my thread forward and then I start to build a wall in front of the material. Now if I left it just like this, made a knot, this would be an actual hollow tie. But I'm not doing a hollow tie because that will give me a very fluffy profile, fluffier than what I want for this fly. So I am going to wrap over the craft fur. And this is no longer considered a hollow fly now, this is a reverse tie. But you see that by tying in that Grizzly the way I did, I really kept it right on top, and there's a clear separation between the Grizzly and the white body. So that came out exactly the way I wanted. So the only thing left for me to do is I have to get a marker, which I forgot to get. So I'm going to pause, I'll be right back. Okay, alright, so we're back. So the way I'm going to change the color, I could have easily made a knot, changed to a black thread, or, since I like using white, and white's so easy to change, I just mark up. I could do this in any color I want. I could have done red, blue, could have done anything. And now I'm going to whip finish this. And then we're going to do a little bit of cheating. You'll see what I mean in a second here. Because I'm using UV resin, I don't need to do any more whip finishes. Now I'm going to take this marker, and I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to mark up this white craft fur so it just looks a little bit nicer all the way around. Perfect. I can also at this point take a good scissor and try and just get the crazies. Beautiful. Now this fly 100% will fish exactly the way it is. It is just a perfect little bait fish pattern. That little bit of flash that's in there is going to give it just the perfect amount of little shimmer in the water. And the craft fur has got great action. So there's literally, you know, nothing wrong with this fly. But I personally like to give it that extra little detail. And in this case, what that's going to be are these fluorescent yellow eyes with this UV resin. So I'm using these 5.5 millimeter fluorescent yellow eyes, and they have a little bit of adhesive to them out of the package, and usually it's enough adhesive so that I could just stick them on and get it started. They usually give me enough time to stick them on, and then I can get my UV resin going. But if it doesn't, if they fall off, it's not the end of the world. We'll put a little super glue on and super glue them on first and then get the UV resin going. But these look like they're working really nicely. I like the way that ended up. So I'm going to get a thick UV resin, and all I'm trying to do here, I'm not trying to do a lot, all I'm trying to do is get it between the eyes so it's touching the inside of the eyes and obviously the fly. That's all we're doing here. That looks really good right there. And now we're going to do the exact same thing underneath. Wow, this fly is coming out just fantastic. Now these eyes are pretty much locked in, but they're not what I would consider bulletproof. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to a thin version of UV resin, and I'm going to put a drop right on the eye. I'm going to use the applicator from the UV resin to work it off the edge of the eye. I really want it to get from the eye to the UV resin that I've already hardened, and I also want it to work its way onto the fly itself, the craft fur. And then of course I'm going to use, you know, gravity and physics and everything else just to make sure that this looks good. So I'm going to spin this quite a bit. By spinning, you give it that very smooth finish, that really smooth, very professional looking finish. And I'm not in any hurry. That looks really good. And of course, like all my other flies, this fly will sit in my windowsill and sit in the sunlight tomorrow and really cure with that good, you know, sunlight, and it'll be rock hard. You know, this. All right, so we're back. So there it is. It's a great little craft fur bait fish. Tie this in a ton of different sizes, obviously. It'll catch anything from pike and largemouth to to snook, redfish, sea trout, tarpon, you name it. It's a great fly. You can tie this totally reverse. You don't need to tie it in reverse. A lot of times I'll add a feather to give it a little bit more fishy look to it. Sky's the limit. It's just, you know, your imagination. So I hope you're having fun. Don't forget to Slick Willies on Instagram. Find me on Instagram. And hope you're having a cocktail with me. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. And good luck catching. See you on the next video.